I have the great honor of introducing our first speaker this afternoon, Jordy Robert McGowan, RPF, University of New Brunswick grad. He has worked with MNR since 2011, where he's an inventory development specialist, and I look into his background, I think that means you get your fingers in everything. He's into tenure reform, eFRI reform, technical specification development, forest management planning, and integrated monitoring plans. So Jordy has a wide spectrum of opportunity to provide direction here. He worked in the industrial forest business in Prince George. Then he went with Timberline in Edmonton in the 1999-2000 period. And then he came into Thunder Bay, where he's working with the Timberline partnerships in Ontario. He's a certified interpreter in BC, Saskatchewan, Ontario. And he works quite closely with Forestry Futures Trust on the Knowledge, Tools, and Transfer Development Committee and with the Provincial Forest Inventory Advisory Committee. And Gord is going to give us a bit of an Ontario eFRI update. So Jordy, where are you? Oh, right here. All yours.
So I want to thank everybody for coming. I appreciate everyone's willingness to submit R&D projects for the program. It's a key component to this, our 2006 to 16 program, and it's going to be a key piece to the 2017 to 2027 cycle as well. I'll refer to those in the future as T1 and T2. So the T2 cycle is going to have an increased reliance on R&D. We're going to try and do the same kind of funding model, looking at trying to increase the awareness of the eFRI program, make it a backbone piece for other ministries, and more reliance on industry and maybe other industries as well as a baseline piece of data. I also wanted to thank Shelley and Anastasia for organizing the event. They did a ton of work to try and to get everybody up here, and I really appreciate it. So my objective for the presentation is just to do an overview of the province's T1 program, current status as it closes out it's closed out, and the current status of where we are at with that closeout. Do a bit of a summary on that on the T1, and give you some indication of where we're at in the T2 cycle. So we're already in year one on that one, so I'll have some updates for that. I also want to give kind of an introduction to the strategic direction that the Provincial Forest Inventory Advisory Committee has ratified. So it's a document now with a vision, mission, principle statements, strategic objectives, focus areas, and goals and timelines. And it's something that we're going to try to measure our success on going forward. In the first one, we were really scrambling to try and deal with a big, massive data set from an imagery perspective and try to meet the timelines associated with all of that data. So this year, or this cycle, we're really trying hard to make sure that we've got a series of statements there that we're going to evaluate ourselves on, and we're going to be constantly looking at a review and trying to make sure that we're on track to meet those objectives. So I'll just give you a quick rundown of what we did. I think everybody knows what we did, but so we flew the Leica ADS sensors, so the line scanner that everyone loves. It's fantastic data, but it is a bit of a pig when it comes to being a large data set, and for the MNR moving out of the 1990s and into the 2000s, we're still like yesterday's technology tomorrow. So we're still struggling with those data sets. my photocopies are terrible, so I can't even read what I got. So we have 20 centimeter panchromatic, 40 centimeter RGB, and near IR. We really went out on a limb there. It cost us a ton of money, but the horizontal accuracy of 1 meter. We have a 5 meter digital surface model. It's an auto-correlated DSM. We have level 1 stereo, level 2 ortho strips and tiles. We have a semi-global matched DSM. We did approximately 500,000 square kilometers, and it's about 2 petabytes right now, all told. And that's sitting on, 450 hard drives. So, anyway, I'll touch on that in the future. But so we have a really awesome data set, and one of the things going forward is we want to have a similar data set in order to build upon. So current status right now is we're mostly done. Ottawa is almost done. We've got Bancroft that's kind of being revisited. In production are the far northern pieces, but they're on schedule. So basically, we're just trying to close out those pieces. So for all that we're a 10-year cycle, everything is started within the 10-year cycle, and the age of the inventory is not to exceed 10 years, but it doesn't mean that we could fit it all into 10 years, given just the timeline. So you fly, you install ground plots, you do the interpretation, and it takes 3-4 years to get that done. So feedback, wow, sorry. So I didn't try to build a complete or comprehensive list. Like, I tried to get as much as I could. So we managed to do an amazing thing compared to what we've been able to do before. A lot of that is the fact that we went to a digital image product. We captured that 500,000 square kilometers in 5 years. Traditionally, that would have been a 20-year cycle at least to try and get that. We have these new image products, and we have these digital derivatives. We have that 10-year cycle. We have new interpretation with different standards just by the way in which we collected it on a soft copy piece. We have updated water. We've integrated the ELC component. We have approximately 100,000 calibration plots. We've implemented an assessment procedure, and we're aligned with the FIM tech specs. So we've had lots of feedback over this 10 years. We've had positive, we've had some challenges, stuff that we've been meeting, but the dialogue has really improved, I think, over the years. I think we've managed to channel some of the challenge stuff into moving the yardsticks forward and changing kind of our expectations for what our products are to look like. So challenges, the image products and derivatives. We've had a difficult time trying to get that data out. At the start of the cycle, eFRI put 3D workstations in all the regions, but it's a single workstation. The workstation times out, the lease goes out. We return it back to IT, and then we don't replace it. We have hard drive issues associated with those things. So we don't have a centralized storage piece to disperse that data. So most of that dispersal of data all fell to Ian, and for each contractor starting now to try to get all that data copied and ready and put into specific hard drives that you can start to queue up and get ready to copy to the awarded vendor. I'm still on negative, sorry guys. So again, the physical size of the data. In 2009, to start dealing with, each strip is probably 250 to 300 gigs. That's a tough data set to start to bring in for an entire unit. when each line is representing that amount of data. Computer technology has changed, obviously. We're able to better handle that over the course of the 10-year cycle. But at the start, it was hard. And that's sort of why we're back to revisiting the Bancroft. One of the challenges, too, is the time lag between image capture and delivery. Ends up being, for people at the end of the cycle, there's a ton of AR updates that they have to do in order to get their planning composite ready. There's some reasons why that got done. That was an advisory committee decision to try and get as much imagery in the hands of all the SFL holders at the start of the cycle, so everybody had something at the start. This round, we're going to try and look at being about 4 years out from plant start. So we're going to try and work with that AR, work with the ARs a little bit better to try to minimize the amount of effort required to get that PCI up. Complexity of the data, the ELC component, the number of attributes, et cetera, has been an issue. It's been hard to integrate the ELC components into the forest management planning tools. Forest management planning tools only started to really kind of look at the eFRI once they got enough of them, rather than, and it's not a blame game on anybody. That's just us trying to go through the process. So in the end, you get stacked up with a whole bunch of data, and all the coding and all the SQL statements all have to reference this new data set. And it didn't. And there are some errors embedded in that. And we took a couple of shots on the chin for that. But I think everyone understands now, like, wow, these are big things, and we got to be on the front end of them. The other thing is the interdependencies of the other data products. So the ownership, the OHN, are all pieces that, with eFRI updating the water polygons, we have a really accurate water product, and most of the ownership is based on the old water. So as we deliver those eFRIs to people with the new water products, all of that ownership stuff starts to move around and create havoc for everybody. Same with the OHN. OHN traditionally flew their own image acquisition program. They collected leaf-off imagery. They delineated a 100-year high water mark. And now they're dealing with a leaf-on product coming from eFRI. And so they had to streamline some of that data because, again, when we speak to some of the tools, those tools are all coverage-based. We're producing a 3D geodatabase. We're not worried about vertice spacing. We're not worried about that type of piece. It's an important piece when you try to convert it back out into a coverage. So these are all things that, we didn't really know that we had quite the impact that we did. We tried to explain at the start that we weren't going to be doing some of those things, but it's in the tech spec, and people quote the tech spec back to you, and you're like, man, it's in there. But it can't be in there. We can't deliver that. So it kind of leads into my communication statement and the analysis of the data and its impact. So people have totally kind of changed how they're approaching the data coming from us. So once you can start to overlay the data onto the ortho and you have your spatial data over top, you can really start to go like, well, man, that one looks like that one, but I have two completely different labels. So then that comes back to us, and we make some kind of assessment on that, but I'm not sure how to describe that, but it's kind of an empowerment of the end user. Suddenly can ask some questions that they were never able to ask before. It puts us on our toes a little bit in that we've got to deal with that, but I think in the end it shows the level of engagement in the product. It shows the level of engagement that everybody has in terms of trying to deliver a quality product. So whether that's the planning composite or operational planning inventory, to us in the eFRI, trying to make sure that we make that as seamless as we can. But again, some examples of that technology change, like, you know, we used to think 500 gigs was a big internal drive, and it's not now. And one of the other things is now you're coming up, people are talking about their mobile solutions, they look at their mobile banking solutions, and they're like, you know what, I want an app. So I want an eFRI app somehow. How come I can't get access to this stuff? And you know what, in 2006, it just wasn't ever an option. I wouldn't think anyone in the room would have thought that people want to build an app, a mountain biking app, say, off the eFRI. And that's sort of where it's going. So you're trying to deal with these expectations are changed so fast that it's hard to keep up, and it's hard to even know where it's going to go. So I mentioned at the start that I wanted to talk a little bit about the strategic direction. So, because it really does shape kind of where we want to go. And whether we want to go there or whether or not we're being forced there can be a discussion at another time. But so, Provincial Forest Inventory Advisory Committee has ratified this strategic direction for the program September. It's taken about 3 years to kind of build, and I don't know. I worked on it a little bit, and it's good. It represents real tangible things that we want to try and do. And some of it are stretches for us, in the sense that, you know, if you look at the vision, we're looking at the eFRI is going to try to be the best in class. And we had lots of debate at that, or the advisory committee had lots of debate about that, about what that actually meant. And really, I think the phrase is really intended to mean we don't want to be the 10th best. We want to make sure that we're stretching and we're trying to make our program the best that we can. We want to make sure that we're doing jurisdictional reviews to make sure that we are pushing the envelope kind of forward. And the amount of money that we're spending on the program deserves a push. So that's kind of where that statement is coming from. You know, our mission is to deliver and maintain. I didn't even bring my glasses. So other aspects of the program is to be evaluated. Second point there is to deliver and maintain a timely and effective eFRI to improve the understanding and management of Ontario's forest resources. Lofty goal. Our principles: provide value for money to the province to enable stakeholders to stay current and innovate as needed, deliver a suite of products, think long-term, and support a province-wide strategy. So these are all key pieces. It reinforces the tie that the eFRI program isn't, while its main client is certainly forest industry, and we're responsive to the forest industry, but we want to make sure that other ministries, whether it's mining, whether it's Ministry of Environment, recognize that this data set will enable them to do a number of their own monitoring and modeling programs and status evaluation. So it's a baseline piece of data for them. The other components is it's broken down into focus areas. So we're doing all land in the province. It's structured, it's scalable, it's adaptable, and it's accountable. Strategic objectives: want to maintain our monitoring networks. We want to support R&D. We want to improve communications. The goals, as you can see, like we go from broad down to individual goals and the development of key performance indicators for us. So goals: want to acquire an elevation product, digital imagery, both airborne and satellite. We want an on-site storage and information management system, IM and IT to allow access to products by users, producers, and the public. We want a focused R&D. We want a communication plan with a review schedule the development of a technical committee and user group, and a documentation plan with a review schedule. And our timelines for that are pretty lofty. So it's now to 2020 to get, and that's just a subset of high points that I selected. So we got a ton of work to do in the meantime. And part of that problem is we have to get ITS kind of on board. So current status of where we're at with the T2 cycle. We've done the image acquisition procurement, interpretation and calibration plot vendor record procurement went out. Assessment plots were supposed to go out, but we've been stuck on the first two, predominantly stuck on the first one. So we have approval for the image acquisition of optical imagery. We're looking at using the ADS sensor again. We'll be getting 20 centimeter multispectral and pan imagery. We'll be getting a 20 centimeter SGM product. We'll have the stereo orthophoto. I don't know if we'll get the, yeah, we're getting an auto-pixel correlated ortho. And potentially a LiDAR DEM. We've explored anyway. We asked for that in the procurement. We have some pricing on that. Now we have to evaluate whether or not what we can do. It's in the strategic direction that we need to collect an elevation product. I think we were hoping for some other technologies to come into play, and we didn't get them. So now we're stuck with a LiDAR only option within that current procurement, and we have to come up with a way in which to do it. So the interpretation calibration VOR is completed. There's 8 companies in the VOR. I don't actually know if everybody's been notified of how all of that's gone. Murray and Joe have had a whirlwind tour for the last 3 or 4 months. I don't actually know. And the assessment plots, so they're not underway. We were hoping to have them out as well. So basically we're dealing with, Ian started that image procurement process last November, 2016, and it's, you know, we're still in it, and it's a full year to try and do. So we have that delay in the award of the image and DEM procurement. And basically it's caused no flights for 2017. So the impact is that we'll be collecting about 140,000 square kilometers in 2018. So we don't have any interpretation work awarded this year, which is obviously what we were hoping to do. At least get the calibration stuff underway. We have no assessment plots underway this year. We're still looking for an IM-IT solution, and we're still in the battle of that. That's been a full year and a half of battling, and we seem to be back to where we started originally. Or we're back to where we were about a year ago. And one of the other things that's come into this is we're still at a fix. Obviously, for a number of programs, we have a lot of money in the sense that a lot of money we have access to. But with the changes, with the strategic direction of being mandated to try and get a procurement ready for a DEM collection, the imagery, there's no real inflationary cost built into that. We're looking to try and do an IM and IT structure that has to come out of that dollar amount. And it's really impacted how we move forward. We don't have the same money available if we buy those services or products, services for one and products for the other. If we purchase those products, then how do we move forward with the interpretation and calibration plot design? Does it stay the same, or do we have to modify it in some way? Because really, out of the advisory committee meeting, the tone that my opinion of the tone is the DEM seems to be a real game changer for for industry. And I think it's a game changer for the ministry as well. Other impacts now are the integrated monitoring framework is coming in. Carbon cap and trade. If you read some of the carbon's information, we need to be within 5% of predicted values. So somehow we have to have an inventory product that at least can be scaled to be able to meet those accuracy assessments. So we're no longer just an eFRI program. We're an eFRI program that's fitting a number of other aspects. So with integrated monitoring, we may be trying to look at calibration plots that collect additional information for wildlife, potentially like Matt's project where we're doing wood products. So the Forest Industry Division can start to look at, soliciting other industry opportunities. So it's no longer just the same old thing. And I think it's just a function of the time has changed. So the DEM data, and the other thing is the DEM data. So if we're looking at calibration plot data, I have this DEM product now. I'm going to have to do something to validate that DEM. So that means research says I got to go fixed radius, and I don't have a fixed radius plot procedure right now. So we're going to have to look at that. We're going to have to look at kind of how we structure those plots and how we determine sample and how we determine sample size and what kind of questions we're going to answer with the data. So that's an example of what we've got some pricing for, is for the single photon. It's 30 points. It's pretty cool. And I think obviously that data set would be kind of a game changer if we're able to do it. Some other examples, I know people have talked about, well, they won't be able to do species with LiDAR. I'm pretty sure those balsam fir look like balsam. So again, that's 30 points, and it's a 20 centimeter vertical that we've been sort of looking at. I can't commit to it, but it's very dense and would be able to provide us the DTM. And in future remeasurements, we wouldn't necessarily have to go out and redo the DEM. We could just do the point cloud from the optical imagery again, that SGM product. Anyway, from that data, we should be able to do a lot of the objectives that have been pushed forward, like carbon, for example. And again, we went to a workshop last week, and we're looking at, with the Canadian Wood Fiber Center, so looking at fusion, the U.S. Forest Service free software. You can integrate all the plots. The red circles are the plots. You can correlate the plots to and the actual measurements from the plot and the heights and the diameters and all that information from the plot. You can directly correlate and do some regression analysis to what the actual point cloud says, and you get errors associated with. You can determine your standard error for how off the point cloud is or how off the plot measurements are. And it will basically allow people to start to look at volumes and be able to, or BAs or whatever the metric is, and be able to put some stats around how accurate their projections are going to be. And that's a real game changer for us. The other thing we can start to do is we can generate metrics on crown closure, BA, height, changes audits, vertical structure, horizontal, changes how we have to document all that stuff within the tech specs and stuff. Like if we're going to look at, we're going to do heights as P99, so all the first returns are going to be the heights for the polygon. Is that an appropriate thing? Or do we take all the 95 and up as our heights? So it changes how we have to define our attributes that we're going to collect. Hopefully, if we go to a cloud-based storage, then really I can write down what I'm going to do as an eFRI program and say that we're going to do 95, If you guys want to run that on your own on the cloud and you generate 92 and that's what you want to run to answer your questions, then you'll be able to do that. So that's where we're looking to be. It might be like 5 years out, but that's the long-term goal for us. And then that basically changes, does the eFRI become more like this? Does it become a series of dashboards where you can start to get live updates on where your inventory is at? Your communications plans change because of it. You can actually just have a link onto your desktop and be able to pull that up. Does it change, like, that backpack? That's GPS, LiDAR, and another LiDAR, and then there's four or five cameras around this thing, and you collect that. Like say, we were talking to the Wood Fiber Center, and maybe you just run that as a transect for 300 meters, and you, cross polygons, and you can start to look at variability within the forest for that stuff. You'll have a record for it. Segmentation analysis for crown closure and occupancy. It'll be a different world, I think, if we go forward the way that we've been mandated to try and go forward. This is what it's looking like. Our goals say we're to dashboard, and all our stakeholders and clients are to have access to it. So there's an appetite to move forward, and I think we're going really in the direction that technology is changing. And one of the other things we've learned is that we may write something for 2017, and then by 2020 it's out of date, and we're going to have to sit down and start to rewrite how we tackle the data. Traditionally, we've always just locked in and produced everything the same way, and I don't think that's the way we're going to have to do it anymore. Anyway, that's all I got. So that's kind of where we're going. Yeah, Doug?
Hi, Jordy.
Hey.
Thanks for the presentation. Myself, along with a number of people that are in this room and a number of other people, we're in Sault Ste. Marie in the spring to talk about the second round and things that people had noticed in the inventory, things that we thought maybe could be changed or done slightly differently. Have there been any changes made in the approach that's being taken as a result of that meeting?
Out of that attribute review, we've changed. We decided that to go to the next round with one inventory with, I think it's 42 attributes, we're going to maintain that basic 42 set of attributes in order to run one more round. People had felt that some of the attributes were still new, and they hadn't been integrated necessarily into the full planning piece, and whether or not there was other data that was to be used. Like, I've tried to say that we're looking for other users to be using the data. We've collected data that is intended for habitat or other analysis packages rather than just forest management planning. So they wanted to keep it in one more time, and then after the end of this one, we'll reevaluate. And maybe in 2020, we reevaluate as to whether or not it's worth collecting all of that data if it's not being collected or not being utilized. So
the short answer is no.
Yeah, no, nothing's changed. We've redefined attributes within the 2010 to 2016 FIM tech spec, and the 2017 will be further refined depending on what the data is.
Well, that's fair enough. It's just kind of disappointing when, a lot of people put a lot of effort into going to that meeting in the hopes that we would improve the product. And nothing's changed.
Any other questions? Going once? Twice? So, you're up. Look.
Cool. Thanks.
You will notice that there was some discussion there about procurement. Some of you who have had audits via the audit system this year, IFAS, realized that your audits got offset. That was also a procurement issue, and I have great sympathy for the eFRI guys because it's totally out of reasonable control by central government, and they can't move without getting permission. So there are some things here these guys are trying to overcome, and it's really tough.